The first time I realized my husband might be jealous of me was when he pretended not to know me in public 3 months after our secret marriage. I stood outside the neurosurgery department corridor, frozen in place as a group of nurses whispered nearby. I heard Professor Carter wears a ring mark on his finger. No way, he's never dated anyone. Exactly. If he's married, who could the wife be? I lowered my eyes instinctively and touched my own ring finger. There was a faint mark there too. For 3 months, only the civil registry office knew that Professor Adrian Carter, legendary neurosurgeon, youngest faculty director in the medical school, and the most famously untouchable man on campus, was my husband. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe and tell us where you're listening from. I had barely taken 2 steps forward when a familiar voice called my name. Lena? I turned and there he was. Tall, calm, distant, wearing his white coat like armor. My husband, standing beside my academic advisor as if we were strangers. Professor Zhao smiled warmly. Perfect timing, Lena. This is Professor Carter. If you ever need help in neurosurgery research, you can consult him. I nodded politely. Professor Carter, he glanced at me. Expression neutral, voice calm. That was it. 3 months of marriage. And he treated me exactly like a student he barely recognized. The hallway emptied. He turned to leave without another word. And right then, Lena, wait. Daniel rushed toward me, breathless, holding a milk tea. I passed the cafe and remembered you liked this before I could respond. A hand suddenly wrapped around my wrist. Adrian's fingers. Cool. Firm. Possessive. Double quotes. Ms. Hart, he said calmly, voice low enough only I could hear. Your research outline needs revisions. Come to my office. Then he pulled me toward the elevator, leaving Daniel standing there, stunned, still holding the drink, inside the elevator. Silence pressed between us. I tried to speak. Professor, talk at home. The doors closed. And for the first time, I noticed something strange. The tips of his ears were red, very red. Our marriage wasn't romantic. It wasn't passionate. It wasn't even voluntary. It was arranged. His parents and mine had known each other for decades. After years of polite dinners and subtle pressure, they decided we were compatible. He was 32, a medical professor, a neurosurgeon admired across the country. I was 24, a graduate student, exhausted from constant reminders that I was old enough to settle down. During our blind date, he barely spoke. When I asked what he thought about marriage, he simply said, "It's acceptable," 2 words. That was the moment I realized he wasn't choosing me, he was complying. So I agreed to. When we registered our marriage, he gave only one condition: keep it private. I nodded. That suited me fine. No expectations. No emotional complications, just cooperation. Except something strange started happening after we moved in together. The first week, I opened the refrigerator and found my favorite oat milk. Discount, he said calmly. It wasn't discounted. The second week, my favorite hand cream appeared in the bathroom cabinet. Colleague gift. Impossible. I'd mentioned that brand once through a closed study room door during a video call with my friend. The third week, I casually said my stomach had been bothering me lately. The next morning, pumpkin millet porridge waited on the table. I made extra, he said. He pushed the bowl toward me without meeting my eyes. Meanwhile, he quietly ate plain rice porridge himself. I watched him from across the table. Something about him didn't match his words. But I convinced myself I was imagining things. This marriage had no feelings in it. It couldn't, right? Except his behavior at the hospital kept getting stranger. One afternoon in the cafeteria, I was halfway through lunch when a shadow fell across my tray. Is this seat taken? I looked up. And nearly choked. Professor Adrian Carter stood there, holding a tray. Waiting. He never ate in the cafeteria. Ever. Double quotes. No, I said. Quickly, he sat down. Silence followed. I kept sneaking glances at him. He ate elegantly, calmly, like a sculpture pretending to be human. Why are you staring? He asked suddenly. I'm not. His lips twitched slightly. Then, Lena, a junior lab mate, approached excitedly. Can I sit here? I have a question about our dataset. Before he finished speaking, Adrian stood up. Ms. Hart, he said coolly, come to my office at 3. Your citations need correction. Then he walked away, leaving half his meal untouched. My lab mate blinked. Since when does Professor Carter review grad student citations? Good question. I wanted to know. That too. At exactly 3 o'clock, I knocked on his office door. Come in. He didn't look up from his computer. I sat. Waited. Silence stretched. Finally I asked, Professor Carter, what's wrong with my citations? He looked at me. Paused. Then asked, the student sitting beside you earlier, are you close? I blinked. What? That student? He's my lab mate. You work together often? Yes. His fingers tapped the desk once. Twice. Then he said quietly, your citations are fine. You can leave. I stared at him. You called me here just to ask that? No. Then why? Ms. Hart, he interrupted softly. You ask too many questions. His ears were red again. The truth became impossible to ignore. The day I got injured, a glass rack shattered in the lab. My arm was cut badly. Blood dripped onto the floor before I even realized what happened. By the time I reached the clinic hallway, dizzy and pale, someone was already running toward me. Fast. Adrian, still wearing his surgical coat, still breathing hard. He knelt in front of me immediately. What happened? His voice was tightly controlled, but his hands were shaking. It's minor, I said. He didn't respond. He just took my wrist carefully and stood. Come with me. He treated the wound himself, cleaned it, stitched it, wrapped it gently the entire time. He barely spoke, except once. Does it hurt? No. His movement slowed. Then suddenly he pulled me into his arms, tightly. So tightly I could feel his heartbeat racing. Be careful next time, he whispered. Don't scare me like that again. Don't scare me. The words echoed inside my chest long after he stepped back. And that was the moment I realized something terrifying. This marriage might not be one-sided, after all. But everything changed the day she appeared. Her name was Evelyn Shaw, elegant, confident. Beautiful. She walked into the department like she belonged there. Later I overheard the nurses whispering. She chased Professor Carter for 4 years back in college. They were practically a couple. She just returned from overseas. Maybe they would get back together. Those words stayed with me all night. I didn't go home. Instead, I stayed in my dorm room, ignoring his messages. Where are you? Did you eat? Does your arm hurt? When are you coming back? I stared at my phone until sunrise. Then the next morning, he appeared in my laboratory, holding breakfast. And medicine. You skipped dinner, he said calmly. Eat first. I avoided his eyes. You don't have to do this. Do what? This. He watched me carefully, then asked quietly, did you hear something? Yesterday. Silence. Then he said, I have nothing to do with Evelyn. I didn't ask. Yes, he said. You did. He stepped closer, lifted my chin gently. You're jealous. I'm not. You are. His voice dropped lower. I get jealous too. My breath stopped when other men talk to you. He continued softly. I don't like it. The world tilted. I don't like anyone being close to you. Then the door opened suddenly. A student walked in, and Adrian stepped back immediately. Cold again, professional again, as if nothing had happened. For a week after that, he said nothing more until the hospital anniversary banquet. That night changed everything. I wore a simple blue dress. He wore a charcoal suit. He stood across the ballroom surrounded by colleagues, untouchable as always, except Evelyn stood beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. He didn't move away. My chest tightened. Then someone approached me. Daniel again. Want to meet some senior researchers? He asked kindly. Before I answered, a hand grabbed my wrist. Warm. Firm. Familiar. I'll take care of my wife. The room fell silent. Daniel froze. My what? Adrian looked straight at him. My wife. Then he pulled me away from the crowd, down the hallway into the quiet corner, near the emergency exit. You weren't supposed to tell anyone, I whispered. I changed my mind. Why? He stepped closer. Because I'm tired of pretending you're not mine. My heart stopped 6 years ago. He continued softly. You gave a speech at your freshman orientation. I stared at him. You wore a white dress. You smiled when the wind lifted your hair. I remembered everything. I've been waiting since then. Waiting 6 years. When your parents suggested our blind date, he said quietly. I said yes immediately. I thought you agreed because of pressure. No. His voice was gentle now. I agreed because it was you. Tears filled my eyes. And Evelyn, I never dated her. Never? Never. He brushed my cheek carefully. I was already in love with someone else. Who? You. The word landed between us like sunlight breaking through clouds. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to scare you, he said softly. I wanted you to accept me slowly. I wanted you to choose me willingly. I couldn't stop the tears anymore. So instead I kissed him. The next morning, the entire campus exploded with gossip. Professor Carter is married. His wife is Lena Hart, the quiet graduate student. Our advisor laughed when he saw me. You hid that well. I'm sorry. No need, he said. He has good taste. Later that afternoon, Adrian appeared at my lab door again. Lunch, cafeteria, no, too many people, I laughed. You were the one who announced everything yesterday. His ears turned red again. 12. Oh, single quotes clock. Parking lot. He left immediately after saying that, still pretending he wasn't embarrassed, still failing completely. At lunch he held my wrist gently while examining the fading scar. Then he kissed it. Softly. Don't get hurt again. What if I do? Then I'll follow you everywhere. Everywhere, yes. I smiled. You're very possessive, Professor Carter. I'm very patient, he corrected. I waited 6 years. Later his phone rang. He answered. Dinner tonight, Evelyn's voice asked through the speaker. No. Tomorrow? No. Next week. I'll be with my wife. Silence. Then she said quietly. You've changed? No. He replied calmly. I just finally got what I wanted. He hung up, then looked at me. Still jealous? I wasn't jealous. You stayed away all night. That was research work. Next time, he said. Gently. Call me. I'll pick you up. I laughed. You're unbelievable. No, he said softly. I'm yours. Weeks later, I watched him cooking breakfast in our kitchen, still wearing that calm expression. Still pretending he wasn't secretly watching me every time I moved. Why are you staring? He asked. I like looking at you. His ears turned red again. Eat first. My phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. Lab dinner tonight. Adrian took my phone immediately. Daniel, yes. The one who bought you milk tea. You remember everything. I remember everyone who likes you. You're impossible. I'm your husband. I wrapped my arms around him from behind. When will you stop being jealous? Never. I laughed into his shoulder, then whispered softly, I think I like you. He turned slowly. Only think. Fine, I said, blushing. I really like you. He pulled me closer. I've liked you for 6 years, he whispered, and I'll keep liking you. Only you. Always you. And for the first time since our strange arranged marriage began, I finally understood something simple. He hadn't married me out of obligation. He hadn't stayed out of responsibility. He hadn't hidden us because he was ashamed. He hid us because he loved me. Quietly, carefully, patiently, for 6 long years. And now he wasn't hiding anymore.